Who wants some salt? Good morning, St. Gabriel's.
Good morning.
I have good news and bad news to start, and it's the same news. We are the light of the world. There it is. Is that a good thing?
Yeah.
Sounds like a big job, too. Might be good news and bad news. Jesus says, you are the light of the world. Darren, you are the light of the world. We, St. Gabriel's, are the light of the world. Well, I want to start today with the story of Peter Feigl. Peter Feigl, you can find his story on YouTube like I did. After this, Peter Feigl was born in 1929 in Berlin, Germany. And when he was 13, he remembers that he and his family were being relocated by the German police. Eventually, he was separated from his grandparents. He was separated from his parents. And this 13-year-old boy was by himself in who knows where. Well, this crafty young 13-year-old befriended some of the German soldiers, and they gave him and his friends food. They took care of him a little bit. And on New Year's Eve, they told him to get on this train and to get off in France at a town called Les Chambon. So Peter got on this train. He drove through the middle of the night, and about 3 or 4 in the morning, he got off in Les Chambon. In Les Chambon, he said it was bitter cold, high in the mountains of France. Middle of the night, didn't know where he was. And he was met by a man named Daniel Steadman, and they took off together out into the wilderness. And they walked in the cold, windy middle of the night, and he came to the village of Les Chambon. And Peter says they were taken to this little stone building called Les Grillons in French, means the crickets. What a place. And there he found himself with about 20-some other children, ages 6 to 18. And from that day on, for years, the people of Les Chambon took care of those children. And that's where Peter lived his next couple years. They gave him food, they gave him shelter, and every now and then he said that they would have to suddenly leave class or leave their homes wherever they were to go out into the woods to pick mushrooms. On a moment's notice, they had to go deep into the woods to pick mushrooms until the all-clear signal was given. And the all-clear signal was a song that the people would sing to the woods to draw the children back. Well, it was 1944, and Peter also remembers a time that there was a call for every male age 15 to 55 was to report into the city for a census. And for some reason, he thought, I'm not going. And so he retreated once again into Les Chambon and hid in the church for days. Well, Peter Feigl, lived to tell this story where many people did not. He found himself in the midst of the Holocaust. He was Jewish and he was being sought after. But he lived because the people of Les Chambon took him in. Now he found out about the people of Les Chambon years later. They were a group of Protestant Christians. And in France, it was about 90% plus Catholics. So being a Protestant Christian was not okay. And those people retreated from their homes to Les Chambon, high in the mountains, isolated, because they were being oppressed as well. And they decided to live the Bible, as Peter said. They made a commitment. Their pastor's name was André Steadman, the cousin of this Daniel who led the children. And the pastor decided they were going to live the Bible. They believed that the Jewish people were indeed the chosen ones that the Bible proclaims. So that's what they decided to do. At great risk to their own life, they did this for years. And now that's a dark, dark, dark time perhaps the darkest in human history. But it lets us see the light even clearer when it's so dark. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world," and the people of Les Chambon believed it, and they lived it. And they retold their own story. And that's what strikes me about this lesson. They retold their own story, which was retelling Jesus' story, the Sermon on the Mount, and they retold it to Peter and these children in 1944. So what about salt? Jesus also says, "You are the salt of the earth." Well, maybe that's best understood. At that time, what Jesus meant was that you are valuable. The Roman soldiers of the time were paid in a handful of salt a day. So the military leaders soon discovered that it's not really possible to carry big sacks of salt around to battle every day. So they developed a system of giving a small token to the soldiers that could be exchanged for their handfuls of salt when they got back to the city. And that's where we get the word salary. It means salt money. So our salary, our value, our worth is indeed salt. Jesus was saying, you are valuable. You are worth all of the money that we can think of, all the salt money that the Romans are worth. Salt was also used in that time as a ritual of agreement. It was a binding contract if two people made an agreement and took a spoonful of salt in the presence of a witness. That was the legality of that agreement, was consuming salt, which is where we get taking some information with a grain of salt. Not the full spoonful, but maybe just a grain because I'm not so sure. And all these expressions, being worth one salt, it means you are valuable. Jesus says you are valuable, valuable. When I think of salt, I think back to my childhood, the carnivals, the fairs of the Shenandoah County, and the prized possession that my dad wanted to go to the carnival every single night just to get a country ham sandwich. And I hope you guys know also that country ham is a little bit of ham and a whole lot of salt. And that was the draw to the carnival. So that was valuable even in my day, this salt idea. Salt is not only valuable, but it's preservative. That's what the country ham is. You take that city ham and you pack it in salt, because I guess the folks of the country were the last ones to get refrigerators. So they had to get all the salt that you could get and pack that meat in salt, and it will last all year round. And you get your country ham. It's not only valuable, it's preservative, it's everlasting. Jesus was saying to these people, you are valuable and you must preserve my message. You must preserve what you're hearing here today. He just got finished saying, you are blessed. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the poor in spirit. You must preserve this message and continue it on. And Jesus said that. The people of Les Chambon read that and continued the same message. They preserved it. They were the salt of the earth in their actions. So, another thing about salt and light, I think if I were to list my 100 favorite things, I don't think light or salt would be on there. And I think that's a mistake. So I'm glad I'm reminded today that the God-given elements of rocks in the ground, which we turn into salt, the sunlight that comes up every day and grows every plant on planet Earth is God-given. It's nothing that we can make with our own hands as humans. Our most valuable life-giving, sustaining elements are given by God every day. So, that's a lot about salt, a lot about light. So what do I think? Well, I agree that I'm valuable. Jesus says, Darren, you are the light of the world. And I say, well, that's kind of a big job, but I'm in. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. You are valuable. You must preserve my message. And I'm in. We're here in church today, and I gotta say what comes to mind is the most extravagant human-made churches. And I've been in 2 of the 3 largest cathedrals of the United States. And these grand cathedrals that are built so high and take many years to build, they just don't do anything for me, honestly. They just don't give me that Spirit of God that I need. But coming here to St. Gabriel's, it was like that. The light came on. Maybe it's because you all are so salty. But it's also for the light that I see here as well. It's both. So at 4:30 this morning, it was pretty dark outside, and most of us were asleep this morning at 4:30, but 2 of us were awake. Mike found himself in the hospital this morning, and he had to bring the trailer to church. So what does he do? He gives Rob a call and says, "Hey man, I know it's 4:30, but can you take the trailer to church in a couple hours?" And Rob says, "Yes." That is a light in the darkness as well, St. Gabriel's. Wonderful to hear that story this morning. So what do I think? Well, I think that Peter Fagel knows the story the best. I think that he is alive to tell his story, which was the story of Les Chambon, which was the story of Jesus, because they were living out their faith. And I think that's a wonderful church to be part of. That's the church that I feel like we're in here today, the saltiness and the light and the darkness. And it's no less than salvation. Another word that starts with S-A-L, salt, salary, preservative, valuable. Our salvation is the exact same way. Mike was saved this morning by not having to take the trailer. He experienced his salvation from the saltiness of Rob's light in the darkness. And that's what happens here at St. Gabriel's all the time. We don't need the human-made things, the grand cathedrals. We just need this message. We just need to be and live the saltiness and the light that God gives us. And I think that's what we do here. Amen.
Amen.